What if your confidence grew from tiny, brave moments you almost forgot? What if the proof of your strength wasn't in some grand, heroic act, but in the small, quiet choices you make every single day? Once, there was a girl who lived in a world painted in shades of shyness and fear. Let's call her Lily. To Lily, courage was a distant, dazzling star, something that belonged to superheroes in movies. To presidents giving speeches, to adventurers climbing the highest mountains. It was for people whose voices never trembled, whose hands never shook, whose hearts never pounded against their ribs like a trapped bird. She saw herself as small and quiet, the opposite of everything brave. In her mind, bravery was a loud roar, and her own voice was just a whisper, easily lost in the wind. She would watch other kids in the playground, the ones who were always the first to raise their hands, the first to lead a game, the first to laugh loudly without a care in the world. She admired them, but she felt like they were made of something different, something she simply didn't have. Her world was a safe, small circle, and stepping outside of it felt like trying to leap across a canyon. Fear was a constant companion, a shadow that followed her everywhere, whispering doubts into her ear. Don't speak up. You might say the wrong thing. Don't try. You might fail. Just stay where you are. It's safer. And so, Lily stayed quiet, believing that courage was a story written for someone else. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, something shifted. Her teacher, a kind woman with eyes that seemed to see right into your heart, was talking about history. She spoke of great leaders and monumental events, but then she paused, and her voice softened. She looked around the classroom, her gaze lingering for a moment on Lily. Bravery, she said, isn't always about big battles or loud declarations. It's not always a lion's roar. More often than not, real bravery is as small and as quiet as a seed growing underground. It's the decision to try one more time. It's the choice to be kind when it's easier to be silent. It's the whisper of, I can do this when everything else is shouting you can too. Try to notice these small moments, she encouraged them. They are everywhere. Those words didn't just enter Lily's ears. They planted themselves in her mind, small and quiet. The phrase echoed as she walked home, as she ate dinner, as she lay in bed that night. For the first time, she considered the idea that maybe, just maybe, courage wasn't a distant star after all. Maybe it was more like a handful of fireflies, small, flickering lights that you could gather one by one, right where you stood. That very night, fueled by a new and fragile spark of hope, Lily found an old, empty notebook. Its pages were clean and white, a blank canvas. She took a pen and, on the very first page, she wrote in careful, deliberate letters, "My small, brave moments." The title felt both silly and monumental. She made a promise to herself, a quiet pact. Each time she did something that felt just a little bit scary, something that made her heart do a tiny flip, she would write it down. Just one line. No long explanations, no dramatic stories, just a simple record of a small act of courage. She wasn't sure if it would work or what it would even achieve, but for the first time, Instead of just wishing she were brave, she was going to actively look for her own bravery, no matter how small it seemed. The empty notebook felt like a new beginning, a secret mission just for her. The first page was waiting, and the thought of what she might write on it was both terrifying and thrilling. The next day at school, the teacher asked a question. Lily knew the answer. Her heart started its familiar drum solo. The old voice of fear whispered, "Stay quiet. Someone else will answer." But then, a new voice, quieter but clear, remembered the teacher's words, small and quiet. Lily took a deep breath, so small no one noticed, and raised her hand just a little. When the teacher called her name, her voice trembled, but she spoke the answer. That evening, she opened her notebook. The first entry was written, "I answered one question in class." A few days later, she saw a new student sitting alone at lunch. The fear was there, telling her to mind her own business. But she walked over and said, "Hi, can I sit here?" The student smiled, and Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. That night, another line was added. "I said hello first." The entries started to accumulate. "I asked the teacher for help when I was stuck. I tripped in the hallway and got back up, even though people were watching. I tried out for the choir, even though I was scared. I admitted I made a mistake." Each line was a small victory, a tiny battle won against her own fear. Days melted into weeks, and weeks into months. The notebook, once empty and pristine, began to fill up. Page after page held the story of her quiet courage. "I told a friend I was sad. I wore the bright yellow shirt I love, even though I thought people might stare. I tried a new food I was sure I wouldn't like." These were moments that nobody else would have noticed. They were invisible victories, forgotten by the world almost as soon as they happened. The world kept spinning. Other people went about their days, and these tiny acts of bravery were like ripples in a pond that quickly disappeared. But the notebook remembered. The notebook held the proof. It became her secret archive, a library of her own strength. It wasn't a diary of her feelings, but a logbook of her actions. Each line was a testament, a piece of evidence that contradicted the old story she used to tell herself. The story that she wasn't brave. This book told a different story, one line at a time. There were still hard days. Days when the fear felt overwhelming, when her old shyness wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Days when she felt weak, small, and invisible all over again. On those days, she would retreat to her room and pull out the notebook. She would sit on her bed and read. She'd read about the time she stood up to a classmate who was being unkind. She'd read about the time she presented a project in front of the whole class, her knees knocking but her voice steady. She'd read about the time she learned to ride her bike after falling a dozen times. As she read the words written in her own hand, a quiet transformation would happen. She wasn't just reading a list, she was reliving her strength. Each line was a stone in a foundation she was building for herself. She saw the proof, written in black and white. She was brave. Not in the loud, flashy way she once thought she had to be, but in her own quiet, persistent way. The notebook showed her that courage wasn't something you either had or you didn't. It was something you built, one small, brave moment at a time. She was already braver than she believed. Confidence, you see, is not born in one big, dramatic moment of triumph. It doesn't arrive like a lightning strike. It grows quietly, almost secretly, in the hidden pages of your everyday courage. It's a garden you tend with small acts of bravery, a mosaic you build with tiny pieces of trying. Just like Lily, you can start your own notebook. It doesn't have to be a physical book. It can be a note on your phone, a document on your computer. The important part is to notice, to acknowledge, and to record your own small, brave moments. Because you are already braver than you think, okay? And sometimes, you just need to read it in your own handwriting to believe it. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more stories to help you learn and grow.